Coming up on today's Eastern Conference Wednesday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, it's time for season previews. Today, we're doing 4 metropolitan teams: the Columbus Blue Jackets, the New Jersey Devils, the New York Rangers, and the Pittsburgh Penguins.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to another Eastern Conference edition of Locked On NHL. It's a Battle of Ontario edition. As always, I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me over at Locked On Senators 5 days a week, alongside Mike DiStefano over at Locked On Maple Leafs. We have to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics and treat over 50 infections. Get yours at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Today is Wednesday, September 13th. And Mike, we've got 5 shows left until regular season NHL hockey.
Yeah, we do. It's coming fast, man. Like, this summer just flew right by. And now we're, less than 10 days away from the start of training camps, and less than or just about a month away from the start of the season. Less than a month, I guess, on the 11th. 4 weeks exactly today until the start, or 5 weeks rather, to the start of the season. It's coming quick, man. Coming real quick.
And what's really fun this time of year, we're going to get to it with the 4 teams I mentioned in the intro, but this is the time of year where it's like, wait, that guy plays for that team?
Yes.
And Mendez over at The Athletic put together a bunch of different players who maybe flew under the radar. For example, James Van Riemsdyk's on the Boston Bruins.
Yeah. I do remember that one because they had that weird situation where they ended up signing a bunch of guys, like veterans, for like $1 million. And it was like, these aren't going to replace Bergeron. It's just not going to happen. But yeah, we'll see how they do.
The other one that really caught my attention is like, wait, what? Max Pacioretty on the Washington Capitals?
Okay, that I actually did forget. I completely forgot that Pacioretty went to Washington. Wow. Yeah. There's one there. I mean, there's a couple. We're going to chat about 4 teams today. And, there's a couple of guys who have made some switches, either who have departed from these 4 squads or who are new to these 4 teams. So I'm sure we'll get stumped a time or two between now and the end of the show once again.
I've got 2 more trivia. I'm going to do it this way. Shane Gostisbehere.
Shane Gostisbehere went to Carolina, no?
No, he went there at the deadline.
Right. Shane Gostisbehere. Oh, I know this too. No, you got to tell me.
The Detroit Red Wings.
Oh, that's right. I was thinking, I'm like, he went somewhere that made no sense because they brought in Ghost, and then they brought in Justin Hall.
Yeah, you gotta compliment Ben Sherratt when you can.
And Petrie. Like I don't understand what they're doing with that blue line. But hey, we'll talk about the Atlantic at some point later on.
Yeah, final one. Matt Dumba.
Oh, Dumba went to Arizona. I knew that.
Yeah, that was right in the wake of the Erik Karlsson trade to Pittsburgh. Dumba's like, okay, well, now I know where it has room for me and who still wants me. He was one of the late unrestricted free agent signings.
Really quickly, I saw a tweet yesterday that I think someone put a story out. I can't remember if it was on The Athletic or where it was. So apologies. But essentially they were saying Dumba, Zucker, and they threw out another UFA that signed there. I think Bukestad came back, and they're like, the culture is changing and people want to be a Coyote. And I'm like, or
great place to live.
Great place to live, great place to play golf, and also they're willing to pay players a lot of money on 1-year deals.
Yeah,
I think that's more alluring. I think the paycheck was more alluring than the culture, but
no state income tax as well probably helps at the end of the day. They also just signed Sens legend Ryan Dzingel is on a PTO with the Arizona Coyotes. But again, we'll save that for the Wednesday edition. And coming up all week. We're going to have a coordinated attack plan at Locked On NHL. The Western Conference are going to go through their teams previews, and we're going to do the same for the Eastern Conference. Let's start with the Columbus Blue Jackets. They've stolen headlines over the last couple days after the Spit and Chicklets podcast, really accused Mike Babcock of his old shenanigans. We know the Mitch Marner storyline from years ago about which is the hardest worker and the least hardest working players on the team. But this one, I don't really even care to get into it too much. I feel like it's been discoursed quite enough. But it's certainly shining a light on the Columbus Blue Jackets heading into the season.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, the spotlight being on Mike Babcock is like, if you're Columbus, you had to have known that this was going to come and this was going to happen. I don't know if they expected it to be this and to have, Biz going after him in the way that he is and continuing on to today. I still see him tweeting some things out there and, showing some receipts. Hey, this is what people are saying. So I don't know what you're talking about, fellas. But who knows? The truth lies somewhere in the middle, obviously, between that beef. But it's going to be interesting with Columbus with Mike Babcock, though, right? Like, it didn't go well for him at the end of his tenure in Toronto. I'm curious to see what Babs can get out of this group. And I think it's going to be interesting to see, like, is he getting off on a bad foot? And like, that's kind of what I think Biz was getting at in a way, is like, okay, this guy's up to his old tricks. Could he lose the locker room pretty early on here in Columbus by doing this type of stuff? That remains to be seen, and I will be interested to see how this team can perform under Mike Babcock. But I think they made some good additions to this group. Like, I think they are going to be a better team. I've got them pegged to be one of the risers in the East, if I'm being completely honest. They, first and foremost, say what you want about Mike Babcock as a person. Pretty good coach. He's always been a pretty good coach. So you're getting a very veteran, experienced winning coach behind the bench. They added to the blue line with Ivan Provorov and Damon Severson. And then they're going to have Adam Fantilli back in the fold, with his rookie campaign, expecting him to have a decent year. Werenski's going to be back in the fold as well after missing pretty well all of last season. You think about the young talent that's there that could take another level. Goudreau perhaps, turns his season around. So I actually I don't know if I view them quite as a playoff team yet, but I think they will certainly surpass the 59 points that they had a year ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, goaltending is going to be a huge question mark. Obviously, they traded Korpisalo at the deadline. Merzlikins, they already paid him, so he's going to be their guy. It's just a matter of which Merzlikins are you going to get. He's one of the most inconsistent goalies in the National Hockey League. When he's on, he's great, but occasionally it's just an absolute stinker a few games in a row, and that can really, take out the wind of a team's sails. I think their young talent is great. Kent Johnson, obviously, is one of those, like, video game type players with his, he scored the lacrosse goal last year and everything. Yeah. But I just think overall, they're a few years away, especially when we already there's that clump of teams, right? Where it's like Ottawa, Buffalo, Detroit. Those three are always talked about as like taking the next step.
I think they're in there. I think they're in there. I do, Ross. I do. I don't think they'll get there. Like, for me, I think it's probably, if I had to rank them, Buffalo, then Ottawa, but I think Columbus and Detroit are on par. I really think those are the next kind of couple of teams there. I really, really do. I think they deserve to be in that conversation.
I don't see it. They need steps from a few young guys. Like Cole Sillinger had that great start to his rookie campaign and then kind of fizzled out down the stretch. And then last year scored 3 goals in 64 games, had 11 points, was dash 23. Like, he's a guy as a top 10, 11th overall pick, I believe, or 12th. He needs to take another step forward, and then they need those other, the Fantillis of the world and the guy we just talked about there, Kent Johnson, to take another step. What's Alex Texia going to be at the next phase in his career?
Oh yeah, he's back now, right? Because he spent the year in Europe, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, so he's back. Jack Ross, Kirill Marchenko didn't get a lot of notoriety last year, but he actually had a really solid rookie campaign for the Blue Jackets. So if he can build on it, I don't know. I'm a little higher on Columbus. Like, their over on FanDuel right now is set pretty low at 73.5, which is tied for the 5th lowest in the NHL. I kind of like them to go over that number, not by a crazy amount, but I think they could definitely get into the upper 70s maybe flirt with 80 points this year. I really could see it happening.
Okay. So it's a team that you'll be betting on as underdogs over at FanDuel this year?
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm going to place that wager before this number starts to climb because I think it will.
So with that, like, what are you expecting out of Zach Werenski? I always have trouble prognosticating players that miss a full season. Like, we know he's an elite talent, but like, what's a realistic expectation for him?
Oh, I think he'll get back to being, a stud player. Like I don't see why he wouldn't. Like he's a very smart player and he's skilled and he's going to be the quarterback on that team. Like he's got to come back and be his team's number one. Obviously, if they do want to compete for a playoff spot, he's got to get back to being who he was. But again, that remains to be seen. Sometimes it may take a month or two to get back into game speed, game shape. So it could take him a little bit, but ultimately, I think that he'll find his stride and get back to being that top pair defenseman that Columbus invested in a few years back.
So your official prediction, maybe 5th, 6th in the division?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's right about where I would slot 5th, 6th. Yeah.
Okay, there you have it. The Columbus Blue Jackets season preview. For more on the Blue Jackets, go check out Locked On Columbus Blue Jackets with Jacob Foster, as well as more coming up next. We've got the Locked On NHL Eastern Conference podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. We want to tell you about our new sponsor alert. The Jace case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jace case is fill out a simple form online and in some cases jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians. Get ongoing care from their physicians on any treatment-related questions. It's doctor-created. It's doctor-recommended. So don't be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why the Jace case offers 5 different life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you the peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off using code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. Save a life. Get Jace Medical. All right, back to the Locked On NHL podcast, the Eastern Conference edition. Thanks to the everydayers out there that join us on the show. We appreciate you more than you will ever know. As well, we also want to let you know that you can find local experts on the biggest stories wherever you get your podcast. We're also free and available on YouTube. We need some applause. The Locked On Maple Leafs podcast has hit 4,000 subscribers.
Yes.
Congrats, brother. That's great stuff.
Thank you. If I would have known you were about to applaud me, I wouldn't have done this. That's pompous of me to applaud myself. I was not aware that you're about to do that. I will add for the YouTube viewers, but appreciate it. Yeah, Dave and I have been working hard, man. I mean, I was a day oneer when the Locked On NHL channel launched. We were looking at four years ago now. I don't know. COVID screws everything up. 4 or 5 years. We've been at this for Locked On Leafs. Might be going to the 5th season, I think, is what we're doing. Yep. And we've hit the 4K subscriber mark on YouTube, and we're excited to get going for another year here. Road to 5,000 starts today.
Well, a lot of people don't probably know that you're the reason why Locked On Senators is a thing.
Well, I mean, I push people in the right directions, but you had to sell yourself, Russ. Had to sell yourself.
Very good. My immediate reaction to you clapping for yourself there. A little Jason Spezza on there. Jason Spezza, part of
Leafs legend, Jason Spezza.
How did he leave the Leafs? He resigned? Said, I don't want to be here no more?
I don't recall. I don't recall. June was a blur.
So you're an expert. Oh, man. All right. We'll get to Pittsburgh later, where Jason Spezza is now hanging his hat. What an assault the Penguins put on Ottawa Senators fans when Erik Karlsson was there for a tour, and they said old friends reunited, and Jason Spezza and Erik Karlsson together once again. But we're going to say Pittsburgh for last, because I do believe they are the most interesting team of the four we're discussing right here. The New Jersey Devils took a huge step in the right direction last year. The point production was leaps and bounds above where it was in the previous seasons. They didn't only make the playoffs, they made it to the second round, beating the New York Rangers. It was the first time they made the playoffs since 2018. Their point improvements was 49 more than in their previous year. What do you think that the Devils have for an encore?
I think that's exactly what they'll do, is give us a pretty good encore. I mean, last week on this show, the Locked On NHL podcast, Wednesday edition, I came out and I said, the East runs through New Jersey, and I still believe that is going to be the case. This team is so good. Jack Hughes took that step that we've been waiting on for him to turn into a superstar last year. I think he's going to continue to build on that and put himself into MVP discussions this season. You know, you've got Nico Hischier rounding himself into one of the best two-way players in the entire National Hockey League. I mean, I remember him being referred to as Baby Bergeron by people within the Devils organization when I spoke with them last year. Now Bergeron's gone. There's someone else who needs to carry that water, and maybe he can take that torch from him. You look at what they did in the offseason. They added Tyler Toffoli, who is a great player, 25 goal scorer. They get 32 goals last year, I want to say. So, he's going to add a good secondary punch to that team. A full season with Timo Meier that they brought in at the deadline, extended him this offseason. That should clearly help with their offense after he was a little bit slow to start his career after coming in from the deadline. And then Luke Hughes on the back end. Like, this kid's good. Like, I understand he's a rookie and he's young and he's going to make mistakes, but you saw him play in the playoffs. He was a solid defenseman, and he's been really good at Michigan for the last couple of years. I think he comes in, and just like his brothers, he's going to be a stud in this league. He's a number 4 overall pick for a reason. So you look at the additions that they made. I think that some guys are going to take the next step and continue to ascend up an upward trajectory. Dawson Mercer is a guy who I'm betting on to do really, really well this year and maybe be one of those breakout players in the NHL. So I like the Devils, man. Like, I really think that they can get somewhere close to where they were at last year when they finished with 112 points. They're currently 4th highest odds to win the Stanley Cup. Their FanDuel over-unders at 104.5. They hit 112 last year. If they can get decent goaltending out of Vitek Vanacek and Akira Schmid, there's also a potential trade that could happen at some point where they can upgrade their goaltending. Let's also not rule that out. I think they should be able to hit the over there at 104.5 as well.
I was literally going that direction because it's easy to look at this team and say, yeah, they can score. Yeah, their defense can provide offense. They've also got a few defensive defensemen in Jonas Siegenthaler and John Marino who can, steady the ship. They've got the balldozer, Kevin Ball, former Ottawa 67. But Vitek Vanacek, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm sold on this. The 911 save percentage was solid in the regular season. The 2 years prior with Washington was a 908. You want to be above 910, let's put it that way, at the very least, to be considered a solid or consistently good NHL goalie. But in the playoffs, man, it all felt
changing, though. I feel like that's changing. Like the average save percentage this past season, I think was like 906. So he was at least an average.
Not in the playoffs.
No, playoffs were a different story. Akira Schmid played really well, though.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well,
I got a little one, too.
You only need one at a time, right?
That's right. That's right. They figure it out.
I think that it's a huge miss both for Buffalo and New Jersey that they didn't pay the price if Connor Hellebuck was seriously on the trade market. Now it sounds like Winnipeg wants to re-sign him. So I don't know what's going to happen with the Connor Hellebuck situation.
I'm sure they want to re-sign him, but does he want to re-sign there? That's the question ultimately there. And if not, I think Buffalo and these New Jersey Devils certainly should be circling them around the deadline saying, hey, you up? Want to chat? We'll see.
Okay, this is almost a good transition into our third team, but Devils Rangers, like it feels like one of these teams is going to be out in the first round, if not the second round. Like the two heavyweights, the battle of the Hudson River going head to head. Like, I love the New York Rangers. I have trouble betting against them. The Rangers won the first 2 games last year in that playoff series and then lost 4 straight. Like, I don't know, man. The Devils are a great team. There's just that little hesitation because when I look at a playoff series, I look at 2 things, special teams and goaltending. And I think I still lean the Rangers, even though I know they lost last year. I think that it's a razor-thin margin between the 2 teams. But I got the Rangers out ahead a little bit, man. For me, Devils need to add a goalie, but clearly they're a playoff team. Clearly they're going to be a consistent producing team. They probably got the best 1-2 punch down the middle in the Metropolitan. No disrespect to Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby.
That's a statement, man. You got Penguins fans are about to come after you in the comments.
Is it that hot of a take?
Yeah, that's a hot take to say that. Like,
no, I don't think it's that hot.
Crosby and Malkin aren't good anymore. That's a crazy take.
What do you mean? I didn't say that they're not good anymore. I just say
That's what I heard. That's what I heard, Ross. That's what I heard.
Give me Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes. Nico Hischier had 80 points while being one of the best defensive centermen in the league, and Hughes had more points than Crosby and Malkin, and he's 21 years old. I'm riding with the Devils 1-2 punch down the middle in the Metro.
I like that take. I like it. It's fine. It's hot. It's spicy.
We don't do a Wednesday show here for lukewarm takes.
Hey, do we got a wager then? Because I'm thinking Devils, you're thinking Rangers. Like we got a little wager on this one. Who finishes higher in the standings?
Oh, I don't know about an 80. Yeah, I think it's gonna be like a 2-point gap. What was it last year between the 2 of them?
Devils had 112, Rangers had 107, so 5-point gap between the 2. Do they close the gap and take over the Devils?
Oh, no, I don't know. I'm not making that
2 seconds ago, you were so on board. And now all of a sudden, you got to put your money where your mouth is and you're shying away like a little baby.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about those New York Rangers. Next, you're listening to Locked On NHL. Welcome back to Locked On NHL. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me over at Locked On Senators alongside Mike DiStefano over at Locked On Maple Leafs. We are running through our Eastern Conference previews over the next 4 weeks, and then we will have our grand finale ready for the start of the NHL season, October 10th, October 11th, when everything is going down. All right, now back to our season previews. We'll get to that New York Rangers, New Jersey Devils bet a little bit later on, whether it's today, before the season. We will circle back, maybe off air so that we actually have time to think. We'll get a few bets in, and we'll have that for our final show before the season. We'll get those in. Some best bets thanks to our friends over at FanDuel. But the New York Rangers, fair to call last season a disappointment for them, the way that they got up in that series and then let it slip away?
I think so, because you're looking at a team the year prior who made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Final, and I think they wanted to take that next step and make it. Like, this isn't a young team, and they didn't necessarily get younger either this offseason. But you look at last year, they added Tarasenko and they added Patrick Kane. Like, you add those 2 players, you're going for it, and you're hoping to make a run and bring a Stanley Cup to New York. And, first round flameout is not the way that they saw that happening, playing out, but it's what happened. And I know they added some decent players. They brought in Blake Wheeler on a really cheap deal. They've got Nick Bonino comes in, adds a little bit of depth, but ultimately they just really need those kids to take the next step. Lafreniere and Capo Caco, if they can't take a giant step forward this year, I'm not sure that the Rangers are going to have much of a different turnout this season than they did last. Like, it's honestly on those kids in particular, in my opinion, to really step up and show that they can be bona fide top 6 contributing NHLers, or not sure I see this team making it much further than they did a year ago.
The core that they have as it stands now.
It's aging though. Like I also look at the age. Like Panarin didn't have Panarin-esque years last year.
Whoa.
Like is he on the decline?
Still at 92 points.
Yeah, but he didn't look great. How many points did Mika have?
91.
Yeah. Well, actually, Mika had a good year.
But at least Mika was plus 25. I know plus minus isn't everything, but when you have 92 points, you should probably be more than a plus 4.
Yeah, probably. That's so weird, too, because they got such a good blue line and one of the best goaltenders in the NHL. How they're allowing so many goals is beyond me.
Yeah, it makes no sense. No. Well, also, they didn't get great goaltending from Yaroslav Halak last year. 24 games and 903 save percentage, well below league average. And they went out and addressed that with, did they? Yeah, Jonathan Drake. Okay, that's another questionable old school bet.
Right, it's kind of it's a lateral move there. They brought a new coach, though. They got a new coach, right? Yeah. So we'll see what they can, if we can see anything. Who do you get? Laviolette?
He's been a bit stale in Washington the last number of years. Not that he had the most talent outside of Alex Ovechkin to work with. They had obviously a few big injuries over the last couple of years to deal with, most notably Nicholas Backstrom. But yeah, he hasn't been like the guy really. Has he won a playoff series in the last 4 years?
Well, I think he would have won with Nashville back in the day.
17. 7, that's a long time ago.
No, I know. It's yeah, he probably hasn't won a whole lot lately, that's for sure. But we'll see what happens with the Rangers. They're over under on FanDuel set at 100.5.
Okay.
So the team over 100 points.
Oh man. Well, Peter Laviolette has one thought process with this team. It's like, how can I get Hedl, Lafreniere, and Kakko to be an elite line? Like, you already touched on it. Those guys need to take the next step. Like, that has to be his number one focus, right? Because you almost think like that power play runs itself. And say what you want about Mika Zibanejad 5-on-5. He's a bit of a streaky goal scorer. He'll have 5 in one game and then none for the next 5. But on the power play, like, they're going to be a top 5 power play in the league. When you have Adam Fox and Mika Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin and all the other talented players that are on there, but they need to produce at 5-on-5. That's kind of the make or break for me. But I think that's set very aptly. I think it's going to be right around 100 points for the Rangers this year.
Yeah, I agree. That's a number that I'm not. I don't feel comfortable making a wager over on that one on FanDuel just because I don't have a strong conviction one way or the other. It's a pretty good line, but I think they're a team that will be fighting for one of those final wild card spots. That's ultimately where I have the Rangers. Either the final wild card spot, maybe they sneak into that third spot like they did a year ago. But that's ultimately, I think, where the Rangers will end up.
And we talked about this last week on the show, but another guy who it's like a bit forgotten where they were. But Blake Wheeler is at league minimum is going to score 50 points. And again, on the power play especially. Put him in front of the net, big body, good soft hands, playmaker. He's a guy who I think that I'd go over to FanDuel and try to get the over on points for him if it's around 35, 40, because they're going to see league minimum. They're going to see aging. But, man, that guy, I think in a lesser role with less pressure, not being the captain or having the hoopla of having his seat stripped off of him, I think that he's going to be a real good, not good, useful player, I'll say, for the
I think that's a good clarification there. I think he will be a very useful player for them. And be a contributing top 6 player, middle 6 player at the very least.
Our fourth team today, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the biggest splash of the offseason, acquiring Erik Karlsson.
Kyle Dubas. Oh, Erik Karlsson. Right.
Did you see? I'm so glad you mentioned this. So they actually just brought in Colin White on a PTO as well. Okay, so. Our friend at Lalim's Marchand tweets out, Kyle Dubas requires a minimum of 3 former Sens at all times. And, Kyle saw it and gave it the old like on Twitter. So I got a good kick out of that.
Oh, did he? Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
So good, man. So I got a good laugh out of that one for sure. Because obviously he's got, Magnus Hellberg, and he made a series of moves in Toronto where it was like, they got Adam Gaudette, Victor Mete, Matt Murray, and
CC, that CC role in there, Spezza obviously for a couple of years. Oh yeah, and they even brought in the name checker. What's his
Scott
name?
Sabrin.
Yeah, they brought in Scotty Sabrin for a
Yep.
season too.
Hilarious. Okay, all that aside, I think Kyle Dubas clearly putting his stamp on the Pittsburgh Penguins very quickly in the offseason. You can rattle off the big ins and outs, but no bigger move than Erik Karlsson. Like what he's going to do, is it too much of the same thing though? That's actually the first question that I'm going to throw to you, because Erik Karlsson had his best years in San Jose after Brent Burns left. It just feels like with Chris Letang, it's like they're both there to do the same thing, move pucks.
How much faith do you have in Chris Letang staying healthy for 82 games, though?
Fair. That's a very expensive insurance policy.
It is expensive, but I think it's a situation that ultimately can work. Like, do I think that Karlsson will put up 100 points again? Maybe not. But I think he could be an 80-point guy. I think it's possible for him to compete for minutes with Letang and still put up 80 points. But, ultimately, I still do question this team and how much more is left in the tank for all these guys. Like, they just continue to just get older. You know what I mean? Like, this is a group that even this offseason, as they had a lot of turnover, like lots of turnover, Dubas made a lot of moves. Like, out went Ruta, out went Granlund, out went Petrie, Dumoulin, Zucker, gone. But he didn't replace it with young talent. He also replaced it with like similarly aging players like Erik Karlsson, who's 32, 33 years old? 33. Lars Eller, who's in his 30s, Noel Acciari, who's in his 30s, Nieto, Hinostroza are, older players. Ryan Graves, I think, is in his upper 20s at this point. So maybe that's someone who's still somewhat in his prime. But a majority of these pieces that they picked up, very much aging players, along with that aging core that they do have with Crosby and Malkin and company. So it's going to be, at some point the wheels are going to fall off of this group. And I'll be curious to see if Erik Karlsson can keep things on the rails for just a little bit longer, just adding that little extra punch to that lineup. I think it was a worthwhile bet. They gave up like nothing to get it. They actually opened up cap space through the trade of bringing in Erik Karlsson. It was short term, but it was quite a shrewd move for Kyle Dubas and company, I may say.
Yeah.
This is a team that, again, I don't have a good read on. They missed the playoffs last year, just 91 points. Their over-under is currently set at 97.5 on FanDuel. And, I think it's a good number. It's a borderline playoff team. It's exactly what I think they are.
It might be a hot take. I think they miss.
I don't think it's a hot take. I really don't. Like, they missed last year.
Yeah.
They brought back the same crappy goaltender that they had last year and paid him a bunch of money. Like they didn't get better in net, and that was a big problem that they had last season. It wasn't necessarily scoring goals; it was keeping goals out of their net, right? So I think that's kind of where you're gonna question, okay, how far can this team go? And it's mainly because there's a big question mark in goal with Tristan Jarry.
Yes, and they had 82 games of both Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. And they still missed the playoffs, right?
That might be the first time, maybe ever, that was the case, where they had both of them for a full 82.
I know, and they couldn't get it done. And now Malkin's going to be 37 years old, Crosby 36. And they don't really have that next wave. Like, who's going to take those minutes?
That's the question, right? It's like, and they're
just relying on the fact that they have a little juice in the tank, and they're bringing back a 39-year-old Jeff Carter who Mike Sullivan just loves for whatever reason. I don't know.
Why are they bringing him back? It does not make a whole lot of sense.
No, I'm intrigued, man, because they could prove me wrong. They could go out and win every game 7-5. I wouldn't actually be that surprised if they do. But they're also going to really need their left side defenseman. They're going to kind of play the Guy Boucher style when he was in Ottawa, when he had his right side defense activated, his left side defense just locked it down. They went out and paid Ryan Graves a ton of money.
Who I like. I do like. That's a good bet. And he's
Peter Pettersson as well. Those are two good shutdown defensemen. They're going to have to be on the lookout. They're going to have their skate sharp and a back pedal when Letang and Karlsson are roaming around the offensive zone.
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be interesting to see how things shake out here for Pitt.
Yeah, can't wait to see how it all shakes out. Next week, we'll get more into the Metropolitan, then turn our attention to the Atlantic. Remember, you can always subscribe to Locked On NHL wherever you get your podcasts, free and available on YouTube. For today, we say goodbye. For Mike DiStefano, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On NHL podcast, your team every day.